today's Motivational Monday is a little bit of a smackdown for some of us parents. Now, let me start by saying I'm not on my soapbox here. I have indeed also been guilty of this, okay? But as I'm doing my lovely little walk and the thoughts arise, I'm looking around my neighborhood and thinking how strangely peculiar it is that there are no children running around, right? There's no little kids like playing on the playground. There's plenty of real estate for these little minions to run around, right? And I know there were children in this complex. There's tons of families. And I started thinking about how I'm mid 40s. So in my time, I'm going to still get on that sort of soapbox right now because I think it is relevant to this conversation. Um, about how back in that time, that wasn't something that we did was just sit inside. That was actually a punishment for us. In my time, we were outside running around on our bikes, playing tag, doing all the things. And now I realize we're in different times, but it's so mind-boggling to me that the natural thought isn't, well, we probably just need to move a little bit more, right? Like our kids are sitting in front of computers all day at school. They come home, video games, homework, everything is still behind a screen. And then when they're done with that, they either have phones or they have iPads or they have some other device that they're glued to. And while I think some of these things obviously are important for enjoyment and there's a lot of learning as well, I think, that comes out of some of these things. There is so much taken away from actually getting outdoors and moving your body, especially if you've been indoors all day, which most kids have when they're at school. So just a thought. I know there are a lot of parents out there that often say to me, my daughter's very overweight and she's expressing that she wants to also help her daughter out and she's lazy and she's this and she's that and she doesn't want to exercise. But also the mother is not showing the value of taking care of her own body. So it's really hard for us to turn and point the finger at our kids are lazy, this or that, when as their parents, it is our job to guide them in behaviors that are in their best interest for long-term survival. Okay. And part of that, whether we want to accept it or not, is that we need to move our bodies. We need to have a healthy level of body fat. We need to not be consuming tons of products that are in packages and filled with sugar and made with things on the label that we can't read, right? Some of those things are fine from time to time, but when this is all you're seeing from your children, it really is an indicator to stand and look in the mirror and realize that it starts with you, okay? Now, I know some kids, some of this stuff is going to be unavoidable, so I'm speaking very broadly here, but as parents, it is time that we take ownership for our children's health and lack thereof if we have not been enforcing boundaries and rules and leading by example, which means buying the groceries that are also going to keep these kids healthy and strong and have less illnesses, and stop feeding them sugary snacks and crap, right? So I don't know. I was feeling very passionate about that because I have conversations with my children often. All three of them are very, very much involved in health and fitness, and it did not come easy. And I felt like a dictator a lot of the times, but I had to keep reminding myself this was for a better purpose. My family was obese and unhealthy from genetics, and generations and beyond. And I was hell-bent and determined to change the story with my family. That was my legacy. And so all three of my children knew the importance. They started working out. I suggest, if you feel lost with this, is incentivizing the activity. And I know it's a pain in the ass. However, your money would be much better spent investing in the habits of your children right now than on some treat that you give them later. And maybe this is part of the exchange you have with them, which was sometimes what I have with my kids, is there were certain things that I just didn't buy. We don't eat that stuff. That's like a treat every once in a while, right? Like that's how I reframed our spending for food. And my kids knew that if they worked out, they had some other chores. They had just a basic spreadsheet that was very easy to check off every day. And working out was one of those boxes. And they would get paid. And I would need proof because sometimes I wouldn't be home. So I would say, send me a workout video. I want to see what you did. And sure enough, my youngest would send me a video. I have videos of all my kids. Part of my youngest son, this was his PE. I was his PE teacher, so I became his trainer because I homeschooled him from fifth grade, and now he just turned 18. So I was like, no, goddamn it, I'm your teacher. Like, we're going to make this about health and longevity and confidence and, all these other factors that I knew would serve him going out into the world along with his basic education. So all three of my kids was chores, and part of their chores was working out. And with that, they started to realize how it made them feel when they weren't doing it. And I would hear that often from them. It was never a matter of them working out because they needed to be a certain size or a certain weight. I think a lot of us can relate to having that awkward middle school, age. I was in cheerleading, I was active, I just ate like crap. And so that was our baby steps, was when we started with the exercise, especially when kids are used to a certain palette of foods and then you try changing things. So the diet always came second, and I involved them in the process. So my most challenging taste bud child was my youngest. And so oftentimes, and if you've been following me for any number of years, you've seen me posting with him in my kitchen, and he's been cooking since fifth grade because I thought that was going to be the easiest way for him to want to actually taste what he was cooking. And that was really it. He really had pride in it. And it was basic stuff. It was like ground beef, ground turkey, ground chicken, chop these veggies. Very, very simple. And now he is incredibly keen on macros and eyeballing portion sizes and knowing like this is reasonable and that's not. This is going to make me feel good and that's not. And he's had a remarkable transformation. And this was essentially me working in little habits with him and making sure that he was sticking to them, reinforcing them. And as he saw the rewards, I didn't need to be policing that anymore. Now I can't even get my kids out of the gym, okay? So this is not to brag because this isn't something I formulated and figured out. I just kept thinking, what is going to be in their best interest, for their long-term survival, their health and longevity, and great quality of life. My biggest purpose in life for all of my children. And so I urge you, if you feel the same sentiment, your kids are an important part of who you are, then I plea and beg with you to get your health in order, because the sooner that you do and you start taking ownership of that, it will rub off on your children. And that is the greatest gift to them ever. All right. This was ranty, unscripted. I just love you and I want the best for anyone who tunes in because I appreciate you and I adore you for taking the time to listen to me, sometimes just ramble. And if you want the show to grow because you love what you hear, I would appreciate it if you just took 60 seconds to back into the main page of Boss Bitch Radio on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you're listening, and scroll down past probably like 10 episodes. You'll see a little 5-star review. You can leave a comment. We look at those, we read them. We appreciate every single one of them. So you guys have a great day.